Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hope you guys doing good. It's mostly been a regular Thursday night here, doing some interviews. I do apologise for last week. Unfortunately, Chickaboo and I had to reschedule, but we will have her coming back in January. I've got a couple more guests in towards the end of the year, but this week's guest released some pretty banging tunes, pun intended. And he also loves the good pun, so I'm sure we'll hear a few of those. And was involved in the Coventry scene very heavily, the start of the jungle scene and into the drum and bass scene as well. So with great pleasure, I'd like to introduce Neil Trix, part of FBD project. How you doing, Neil? You all right?
Good evening, Jay. Good evening.
Yes. How's it all going, mate? You keeping well?
It's going very well. It's cold, though, isn't it?
It is cold, mate. But you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I like the cold. I like the dark evenings. I like the darkness. I'm definitely more of a night owl.
Well, rather you than me.
Don't get me wrong. I do like a bit of sunshine as well, but I don't mind a little bit of winter as well. So thank you very much for.
The winter makes you more productive, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go for that. Yeah, because you're indoors more. It's not much to get out there. So first of all, we're going to give a couple of quick shouts out. I'll send a shout out to Sparkles Johnson. All right, Sparkles. Do love that first name. Your wife indeed. Going to send it out to Rob Harmer, out to Donna, big up yourselves, out to Mr. Mark Bollard, all the Wax On crew in Birmingham, out to Tony, Andy, Yvonne, Laura, Thomas, out to Samantha Allen, our encyclopedia, evening from Zurich. Very nice. Out to Wix Biggie out there and Adamski out there on the YouTubes. So how we like to get started, I like to kind of just get right back to that kind of first moment. And, you know, sometimes there isn't a memory of when you first had like that kind of emotional connection to music. Was there a particular song, or were you somewhere? Do you kind of recall where you heard something and went, oh, this is something?
Well, I suppose really living in Coventry, really the first introduction to music as a young kid. I mean, and I think, but you know, that's when I kind of got involved in, I suppose you could call it electronic music, but it isn't electronic music, you know, the urban kind of music, I suppose. But before then, being in Coventry, it was ska music, you know, that was the original urban music. And you know, I was the Specials and you know, Selector and the Beat and Madness and all those kind of people, you know. And it was that's kind of when that alternative music was on my radar, you know. But then really what kicked it off for getting into the beginning of house music and, you know, all that stuff was electro, you know. Definitely, you know, listening to people like Man Paris, Boogie Down Bronx, and, you know, Cybertron, Clear, and, you know, Africa Bombata, and buying all the electro albums, not on record, on tape. You know, we never used to have records back then. It was all tape cassettes, you know, and so that was it. Anything on the electro series, which was an amazing. Used to wait for the next electros to come out. Do you know what I mean? And there were some brilliant things on there. You know, Al Nafish and hip hop bebop, and, you know, Roxanne Shante and all that. You know, Lisa Court Jam and blah blah blah. So yeah.
So at that point, were you kind of intrigued with how they were making it, or were you just kind of consider yourself just like a fan of the music and just like, I like this, I want to dance to it?
Both, because I remember seeing the first double tape. Amstrad did the first double. Well, what I remember was the first double tape cassette mixing thing, and it was like a box with one speaker, and it had a double cassette on it, and you had to kind of, can I mix these two tunes together? And I remember doing. My mate had one. I didn't have one, but I remember doing tape cassette mixes, so there was no gaps. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was what got you into thinking, wow, this is really cool, you know. And you'd sit there pausing it, right, pause it, hit the next one. Then we had another cassette connected to it to record it, you know. And that was it. Then you realized, A, I love the music. B, I was into breakdancing and BMXing. And and then you had the music thing that came along with it. It was natural, you know. So
were you a bit of a b-boy dancer, getting the mat out?
I've done my bit, you know. I did a few things. I wouldn't say I can do it anymore, you know. I can probably spin on my head a bit faster now with no hair. You know?
I think my best effort was trying to learn the caterpillar, and I think that was about as far as I got with it. Really, I've never been a dancer. I've always been more comfortable,
Really?
you know, the other side.
Well, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, that was part of it. I wasn't a good break dancer. Don't get me wrong. I could do a few tricks, but you know, I wasn't there. But it was just the whole culture of it. You know, going around, the music was coming in, and it was, you know, I was a young kid then, so I was like, what, 14, you know, when that was first happening, 14, 15. And, you know, Coventry had a good breakdance scene, and we used to go to Birmingham as well, because there was a Birmingham posse, and there was you know, Coventry was always kind of, Coventry keeps the wind off Birmingham, you know, so it was always like the second class, but we had some really cool people, and there was some really cool vibes going on there. Do you know what I mean? And it was brilliant. You know, I used to go to like Sydney Stringer School, if anyone's on here from Cov, and they'd have all the breakdance crews there. You know, I remember doing a competition there, and it was brilliant because they had this wicked basketball court, and it was like a polished wooden floor. You know, so perfect.
There you go. So musically, then, what was the kind of next stages of what you were getting into after that?
Well, that was, I suppose, you know, 84, 85. And then what I used to do, Jay, was listen to the radio a lot. And I'd listen to like Robbie Vincent, Rankin Miss P, you know, all of these Radio 1 and various shows. And I was getting into reggae and the early soul and electro, you know, like Loose Ends. And to be honest, that's where it all started for me, you know, like hearing 707s and 606s and 808s on those soul grooves, you know, it was just amazing. Just, yeah, totally different thing, which kind of led into the early parts of house music, you know. And then by the time you were getting to like 87, that's when I was buying import records then at 17, buying house music in, you know. And there was independent record shops back then, but the independent shops really dealt with indie music. So it was goth music, and, you know, there weren't many shops that actually imported electronic music. So it was really difficult, really, really difficult to get your hands on it. I found a few places, and I managed to get some music, but, you know, that was the beginning of it, really. And, you know, you would go and hunt through the HMVs and the hour prices, and you know, they had a tiny little section which was the imports bit, or the electronic stuff, you know. And God, Jay, back then you would rely on, I mean, just past then, you would rely on things like, if you remember, I can't remember what the book was then, but there was a record shop in Manchester used to send out a booklet of all of their releases, you know, and it was like a paper booklet, and you could order off the booklet. And this was before the likes of Hard to Find Records or whatever, you know, there was no online then. And then that was the beginning of kind of like, oh my God, there's all this music out there, you know. And then you would get things like, do you remember Record Mirror?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And
you used to, so this was going into like 88 then, right? And then you had Record Mirror, and you were getting that, and you used to look at all the dancing men. And do you know what's funny? It wasn't categorized then. Everything was music.
Yeah.
You know,
I guess there wasn't a need to kind of put it into a pigeonhole so that it would fit in a certain style, right?
Yeah, Spin In Manchester, was that it? Paul's just put it on there now. I think that's what it was, Spin In, that used to send out a little booklet. It was amazing, you know. And I was registered for it, and you used to get this booklet, and you'd get all the Belgian imports from it, blah blah blah. You know. So it kind of, by the time you got to 88, around there, obviously I was already buying tons and tons of music, and that was where you found out whether records were cool or not, you know. There wasn't any, you couldn't log into Radio 1 and listen to Fabio and Groove Rider doing a show or whatever. You know, Kiss FM was, when was Kiss FM illegally? But I mean, we weren't getting Kiss FM in the Midlands. We used to get tapes sent up of Kiss FM. You know?
Yeah, they were legal certainly by 92, so I'd say maybe 1991. So So you're buying records at this point. So have you got turntables? Are you DJing, or at this point are you just kind of collecting the music because you want the tunes?
So so I started really. What happened for me was kind of 87-ish. I had a job, blah 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 blah, and I was into the music, loved the music, and then I just went to Ibiza, and in 87 was like, this is amazing, you know, this is it. I'd already buying music, and I'm going back. I quit my job and was like, right, I'm going to Ibiza. I went to Ibiza, came back. I know what I want to do with my life. This is it. And in end of 87, 88, I remember it, the first ever gig we put on, I managed to save the money and I bought a pair of turntables off a guy, and his name was Kev Jr. And don't forget, right, in 86 and around there, everybody used to go to nightclubs, but in Coventry, there was a place called Park Lane. And in Park Lane, it was, you had to wear a shirt and tie, and you had to, but we used to have a Wednesday night acid house night. And there were some bloody cool clubs in Coventry, but there were alternative clubs. And they used to do like half an hour of acid house or something, and they wouldn't ever do, you know, the rave thing back then, even that word was sin, you know. And so Jeff Paris, who I got to know, he was a soul DJ. He wasn't an MC. So if anyone's on here remembers the Midlands, you know, Paris became this ginormous MC playing at all the raves, blah, 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 blah. But before that, he was a soul and funk mobile DJ. He had a little PA system. And in fact, the first PA system that they used for the Amnesia house gigs was his mobile DJ rig. Right? And he was playing in a place in Coventry called the Tally Ho, that was right. And it was the Tally Ho, and he was playing upstairs in there. And basically, the Amnesia, this is really, I mean, this is brilliant. The Amnesia, the guys who set up Amnesia were also in Ibiza in 87, 88, right? And they came back going, we want to bring these raves back. What should we call ourselves? Amnesia, makes sense. But they were doormen. They were actually bouncers in the Tally Ho, right? So Jeff was the DJ, right? They were the bouncers, and all this crew. And by the way, this is really interesting because Birmingham didn't have a scene, nothing at all. And as this Tally Ho thing kind of like went on and carried on going, and Jeff was buying a bit of music, and I was hooking up with Jeff then, and we used to go to Birmingham and Manchester and blah, 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 and buy music. We were bringing it back to Cov and introducing it to all these, you know, all the people in Cov. And this was before banging tunes. It was before, you know, and we were doing this thing, man. And my first gigs, I didn't have a record box. I had a crate. I was getting the bus into town with a crate, you know, that eager. And basically, Jeff was, you know, doing his thing. And that's where it all started. And then a nightclub called Reflections was open, and they started doing that. I think it was a Tuesday night and a Saturday night, early acid house nights. This is still before the rave scene, you know? Yeah. And this is where it all started from. And I was playing with Jeff. We were doing all of these gigs, and then Amnesia kicked off. And then, you know, and again, this is still 2 years before banging tunes. And then what happened in Coventry is that me and Jeff weren't playing in Coventry. We were actually playing 5 nights a week in Birmingham. So we were playing a Tuesday night Monday night, in Solihull, Tuesday night in Halesowen, Wednesday night in Birmingham, the Dome, which was a massive nightclub. I mean, I played there with 808 State, Candy Flip, Colt, you name it, Alternate, Cold Cox, blah, blah, blah. Me and him were playing more out of Coventry than in Coventry, but there wasn't a scene in Birmingham. So again, we were part of creating that scene in Birmingham before the Pandemoniums, the Quests, the bloody, you know, whatever they were existed. Me and Jeff were playing all of these gigs every week, week in, week out. I was getting on a train, going to Manchester to buy music from Eastern Bloc, going to London to buy music from, you know, Bluebird and all places like that. And I'm bringing it back to the Tally Ho and the 3 Tons, which were these 2 venues in Cov, and giving it to the DJ and saying, play this, mate, play this tune. This is, no, look, where'd you get this music from? You know, and this is before the rave scene. You know,
Neil, your memory is amazing, mate. I don't know. You must have been stone cold sober throughout this whole period, or you kept a very good journal.
To tell you the truth about everything, all my mates had a brilliant time DJing, partying, but I was there to DJ. So I was the one who was straight, you know, and that's how I can remember everything.
Yeah.
Because I was there for a different reason. That's what an interesting thing, Jane, you'd know this, right? When you go to a club, there's two types of people. There's the producers, the engineers, the light people, the DJs. You're on a different buzz to the punters, you know? So I've had a different rave scene to the same people who were in the crowd for 10 years, you know?
Well, I tell you what, you're a better man than me, because probably for the first 10 years that I was playing out regularly, I used to treat every gig as basically a night out, until I got to a point where I thought, this is not sustainable. So I need to start looking at these slightly differently. So clearly, if I had done, I probably would have much better memories about what I'd actually been up to over the last 20 years.
Well, I remember, I'll come on to some of the parties, and one of the things that happened with banging tunes, you'll understand that I got into that eventually, and you'll understand how, and then you'll understand how you'll be shocked how we managed to survive to now from the fun we had. And but that was where it kind of kicked off, buying the music, and I was hooked, man. I mean, you know, I would like work, save every penny, and I'll never forget one thing, being in town, and I had no money on me, and I saw my mum in town, and Stacker Humanoid had come out. I'm like, mum, I need some money. What for? Just some food. I want to go and get some food. Okay. I went and bought Stacker Humanoid for $1.99. You know, it's like, that genuinely happened, and I'm just like, you know, it's the black crack, Jay. You will get addicted, and you don't want to miss it. And my first decks, I've never owned a pair of Technics ever.
Really?
No, I never owned a pair of Technics, and I bought a pair of SoundLab DLP3s, and I learned to mix. And Jeff will back this up. I learned to mix on an old double deck all-in-one console, with a tiny little pitch control belt driven in Jeff's house, and that was the mobile rig that he used to use for the soul and funk stuff in the 80s. You know? And we used to do mixtapes on that. You know?
I mean, it's amazing. The sound, I learned to mix on those Sound Labs as well. You know, they were super sensitive, and you just literally, you just blow on them.
If you sneezed, it become a 78. It was gone. You know? So it was brilliant. And I had a Tandis. I'll never forget it, by my first speakers. I went into Tandis, and they had these speakers, massive speakers on a deal. And I was working in Birmingham, and managed to carry the speakers back to my house on the train. I managed to get them on the train and get them back. There was such a deal. I had them, I had this realistic mixer, you know, everybody had one of those. And I remember doing an interview on Rinse FM, and the realistic mixer, Cy from Two Bad Mice, put a post up, the same mixer that I had, they mixed Bomb Scare on it.
Oh, really? He's in here somewhere. Out to Cy, pick up your stuff, mate. Yeah, but you know, that's you had to be that dedicated back then. I think whether you wanted to be a DJ or a producer, you know, for a producer, you know, you if you were lucky enough to know someone, you got to learn it. There were no online resources. The same with DJing, you know, there weren't many people that were doing it really well. Certainly not enough to kind of teach other people. Yeah. If you wanted it,
you're going to laugh. You're going to laugh because you're going to talk about the DJ, and you know, I know the DJ stuff you've done, but I wrote DJ classes, right, in the early 90s, mid 90s, right. I wrote DJ courses for the local council, and in the late 90s, I delivered them, and I actually taught Frank Skinner to DJ on telly. Seriously.
What was he into? His drum and bass?
Well, no, he had to do this thing for the Midlands because he was a Birmingham lad, and he had to do 4 things that were going to teach him a new skill. And I, on telly, taught him to DJ. You know, he's brilliant. So
nice.
That is a closet jungle DJ.
All right, let's take a trip back to Coventry. So at this stage, you're kind of, you know, you're taking all these trips outside, you know, kicking off little scenes, getting music involved. When, you know, the music started to evolve, you know, more breakbeats are kind of coming into it. What's your kind of thought of this? How, when this new breakbeat orientated sound is coming in, what's your thoughts?
One of the so going through the kind of phases of where we went to, so the early rave scene, like going, you know, to all the Amnesias and going across like to the Hummingbird and playing with Guru Josh and all that kind of stuff, and it was all four to the floor stuff then, you know, you'll remember this. It was like, I don't know, going back to the Eclipse, I mean, we were spoiled in Coventry because we had this venue come which was called the Eclipse, and it didn't exist anywhere in the rest of the UK. It was this venue that they managed to get as a private members club, right? And Stuart and Barry had this amazing lawyer that basically looked at the legal contracts of having an all-night venue. And as long as everyone was a private member and you didn't sell beer, you could go on all night. So, and they could open it from Friday to Sunday. It was brilliant. So they did. So we had the Eclipse, and you can imagine when the Eclipse started, let's say the BPM was, I don't know, 125, 129 BPM. So it started then. But as you went through the Eclipse, and, you know, at that tempo, four to the floor, you know, house music and techno and stuff was the norm. And then for every few months that went by, an extra couple of BPM would be added to the speed. And when people were producing stuff, you know, it carried on and carried on. And by the time you'd got to like a year into the Eclipse, we were up to like 135, 140 BPM, you know. So and that's when breaks were allowed to be introduced. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you could take the Amen break or the Apache or the Think or the, you know, whatever, and it would fit then because it didn't sound like it was too slowed down, you know. And what actually happened, Jay, which allowed it to happen, was technology. You know, before, when I was DJing, and that's all I was interested in. And I remember meeting a guy called Kenny Kago, and Kago recorded some stuff on Reinforced. He had a track out on the Enforcers, but he was Jeff's mate. And they managed to get an S1000, an Akai S1000. And I was just like, what are you doing? I want to see this. And it was Akai and Insonic and, you know, companies like that that brought out affordable samplers because we had no money. We couldn't afford a studio. You know, a mixing desk back then was $2.5, $3, $4 grand. A sampler was $2 grand. You know, that's before you even have a keyboard, a computer. You know, you had an Atari back then. I made my first tracks on an Amiga, you know, Commodore Amiga, which a load of people did. But the point I'm going to is technology allowed breaks and samples to come into early tunes because, you know, those kind of samplers on the claviers and, you know, the Fairlights and stuff, they were £20,000 and they were in big studios. None of us could afford to do that. And don't forget, we were all a group of kids. EMU as well. I had an EMU E6400 and a 5000. Don't forget those kids. We couldn't afford to go into studios. You know, I made all my music in a bedroom. You know,
like I think most people did, right? Yeah.
And we had to bloody work hard to get a 1040, you know, an effects unit was 500 quid. You can buy a whole computer for that now. And I'm saying the technology allowed people to sample stuff and it allowed people to introduce samples into breaks. So the first kind of break stuff, if you remember, still had four to the floor stuff into them because it was needed, because it was a transition, you know. And then if you listen to like the Cole Cox thing, the Rex and Effects, that was one of the first tunes that just put a raw break into it with nothing else. If you forget things like Young MC and those guys who did it back in the like 88, 87 days, you know, when we start going into the early rave, the first part of it was Belgian stuff, which was a really solid 909 with an Amen break underneath it, you know. So, and if you want to say that, that's kind of where the original jungle techno stuff come from.
Yeah, it was R&S Records. They were responsible for many a big tune. Still are now.
What happened, Jay, was the kick drums were mixed lower in mix and the breaks were brought up higher. You know, and I remember playing 89, 90, whatever it was, a thing called the Cough Connection. And Frankie Bones played. And he was one of the first few people to actually play a load of breakbeats. And he just blew the place to bits, you know. It was just unbelievable. And the first one of those first people to hear somebody playing breakbeats as a whole track rather than just an underpin of a track.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, because it was, you know, I remember some early house stuff that I've got. you know, the breakbeat part of it was just a little, you know, it was a little kind of bridge section that was in the track. You know, it was just a little bit of a different flavor before the 4/4 came back.
Exactly. Yeah. But the whole emphasis of that was that was the beginning of the transition, you know, and you pick up tracks like Who's the Bad Man, you know, where it's got a 4/4 at the start, bam, drops into an Apache break, you know.
Yeah.
That's when people realized actually these breaks can be used, you know, and we can use them on their own, and they're not having to be part of a track. And that happened because the music was speeding up.
Yeah.
You know?
So what at what stage are you kind of thinking, I want to start making some tunes? Where do I get started? How do I get this going?
So so we were DJing. I mean, another club I was playing at all the time, Shelley's in Stoke-on-Trent, you know, legendary place. And that was just at the time when I was playing out all the time with like Tango, Ratty, you know, and I remember doing Ratty's first gig with him in Leamington Spa. You know, the guy ended up being a massive DJ, and a friend of his, Danny, who ran Atomic Jam and Quest, he's gone, Neil, do you want to come and play at one of my gigs? Yeah. And okay, no problem. All right, I'll introduce you to this guy. This is Ratty, man. He's going to be a big DJ. And I did his first ever set with him. Nice. You know, and I remember meeting those guys, and then because I was doing that DJing all the time, and it was like, well, what's next? And I remember we'd started banging tunes, and well, Luke and Nev started banging tunes, and then we moved it into the city centre, and that's when I got involved. And Luke had a friend called Billy, and Billy was a cool guy. He had a wicked little studio, and I'd met Kago first of all, Kenny Kago, and I was just hooked, man. I'm really interested in technology, you know. And Kago, he was doing his own thing, but then Billy said, Neil, come and make some music. You know, you've got to make some tracks to take to Shelley's, to play at Shelley's. And me and Luke just went round there one night, just stayed up all night. You know what it's like, sample this. And it wasn't a tune, Jay. It was, right, let's nick a bit of Liquid. Let's nick that track off. Let's nick the first logical progression break from LTJ Bookham. Let's make a little bass line from it. We made a tune. It's brilliant. You know, and it was to play at Shelley's. And I remember it. And it was, you know, it was like, right, and it was Neville, you know, Neville was Mr. Mike. He was brilliant and loud and nasty. And he was like, this is it, first release, I'm banging tunes. I'm like, nah, it's not the first release. This is just me and Luke learning, you know. Jay, everything was out of time. The loops didn't work properly. The mix down was about as you know, as clean as my muddy boots. You know, it was bad. We'd done it. And mate, I was hooked. And that was it. I'm into it. You know,
yeah.
And Jay, do you know the best thing about it? I was working in the record shop every day, DJing every other night. At that point then, we moved into Luke's dad's house. It was a 6-bedroom house. If anyone's here from Coventry, Potter's Green. Dude, we had 2 studios in there. We ran banging tunes from there. Luke used to help put all the Amnesia House gigs together from there. So we started partying on a Thursday and ended on a Wednesday, you know. It was like that. Every single week was lunacy, you know, and it was amazing. And because of all that, we were around music 24/7, you know,
yeah.
And you could just hear, I want to make that. I like that style. I want to do this. I want to do that. And, you know, and I met a guy, I was introduced to a guy called Gavin Watton. And Gavin had a little studio. He had an S950. I had no equipment then. And Gavin was like, come and do some music. So this is how the first FBD thing came around. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And we got in the studio, like you say, took a load of breaks. It was like 150 BPM by then. And, you know, the Eclipse had done a few years. We were still all playing out. We were doing our thing. And me and Gav were making tunes, man. And again, in his bedroom, you know. And that's where the first FBD thing came from. And I had the record shop. There was all these crowds of people coming in every week, you know. And we knew exactly what to make. You know, me and Luke had this style that we were into. And we didn't play, you know, obvious rave tunes. We were into different rave tunes. And that's why people used to visit the shop as well, because they were like, banging tunes, man. If you go there, there's a level of quality control that exists, and Neil and Luke were managing it, you know. So it was inevitable, to be honest, Jay, that being around that music every day, we're going to make it, you know, and we did. Yeah.
Let's dig a little bit deeper into banging tunes, because obviously, you know, it was a big part of the Coventry's contribution to the scene, not just as a store, but obviously also as a label. So when were you around for the initial parts of it kicking off, or when did you get involved with the with Banging Tunes?
So Banging Tunes started off as a ticket shop over the road from the Eclipse. So, and this is the cool thing. So Banging Tunes was like 91. I'd already been DJing for 4 years by then, you know, and I'm 50, by the way, everybody. So, you know, it's
happy birthday, mate.
Not now. I was this year. But, what happened was, I remember I was working in Birmingham and I'd got this job doing telesales, Jay, and I'd got made redundant. And I remember getting the train home and going into Banging Tunes, and I met Luke, and Luke had just started Banging Tunes, and he had all these records he bought in, you know, naive Luke, he bought them all in. And I'll never forget it, mate. He said, yeah, I've got all these tunes, blah, blah, blah. And I said, let me have a look, I said, oh, this is a bad tune. No, I don't really like that tune. I said, no. You play it on 45. It's Future Assassins. This is the B-side. You've got to play it on 45, mate. Really? I said, yeah, watch. Oh, my God. That's a wicked tune. And I was like, yeah. He said, how do you know all this? I said, because I'm into the music. And Luke said, right, we're moving into the city centre. You're now part of Banging Tunes. And that's how it happened, you know. And we were moving like a month later. And there was me, Luke, a guy called Roachy, Anthony Roach, who was a bloody lunatic, but he was so into his music. And we all began Banging Tunes, you know. And there was a middle shop, really, that Neville from Amnesia ran to do all clothing. So we used to get loads of clothing in. Then we had the upstairs, which was the record shop. And then in the basement, we just stored everything. And I mean, to be honest, we had people coming from every part of, you know, the Midlands. And you know, the cool thing about a record shop, Jay, right, which is missing now, is there was quality control. Yeah. And we were the quality control. So this is how it used to work. Before the internet, Wednesday, Thursday, you get a call from SRD, Jack in the Box, you know, blah, 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 all these distributors. Hello, mate, we've got 100 tunes to play you. Cool. So we'd sit in the basement, me and Luke, on the phone listening to these tunes. Yeah, give me 100 of them, 200 of them, 300, yeah, 100 of them. So we knew what was going to sell. And genuinely, Jay, we had bags under the counter with the names of our customers. And there was queues out the door, right? And this is no joke. They would be there and you'd open it. You know, I remember playing Exeter one night with Luke on a Friday night. We played Exeter, me, Mickey, Finn, blah, blah, blah. We got back in the car that night. We went to a party afterwards and got back at 10 in the morning. So we just straight to the shop, opened the shop. You've also got to remember, we opened this shop as everyone's just came out of the eclipse, right? From an all-nighter on a Friday. Suddenly, they're all in McDonald's having their breakfast, trying to come down a little bit. Half an hour later, they're all in Banging Tunes. And we had some massive Bose 802 speakers. And the party started at 10. It wasn't a record shop. It was a rave, you know. And it was so cool, mate. And we had bags for people. And they'd just come up, Neil, you got my bag? Yeah, there you go, mate. Yeah, there you go. Pay you, thank you. And it was religious. They would come over every week, in and out, buying music. And that is, we met so many people. It was the coolest time ever, man. It was just amazing, you know. And you can imagine from that, I'm into technology. I love technology. And I'm like, I can make this stuff. What's stopping me making this? I can do that, you know. I can make that happen. So I did.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, do you know what? I just want to bring in a question from David Rupture Henry. What influenced you to make one of my all-time favourites, The Core?
First of all, before I answer that, Mr. David, thank you for booking me to play at Rupture when you came down to see me at Nibber's night at Interlight, because you and him got me back into it again, you know. And if you hadn't have booked me to do that, I probably wouldn't have bothered to get back into doing music again. because I'd done it and I enjoyed it. And so thank you, first of all, even though you don't have anywhere near the jokes that I have, David. So
Neil, I don't think anyone can beat your jokes.
Yeah,
You're the king of dad jokes.
So the core, right? So this is what happened. I had done FBD with Gavin, and I was hanging around with like John Graham, Scanner, and Parks and Wilson, and blah blah blah. But John went on to do some amazing house stuff as Quiver. But then I was, going out with Dr. Scott and going to some of the raves in Swindon and blah 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 blah, and enjoying all of that. And I'd done FBD, and then we did a track called the track was FBD, and Let's Do It. It ended up being, but it was actually FBD. And then I did a track called Terminate, and I think Si's on now, but I'll tell you where Terminate came from, because they did a track called Chaotic Chemistry. Do you remember that EP? And I was playing in Wolverhampton at a place in Wolverhampton. I remember the first time I got that on a promo and played it, and I must have played it 5 times because I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to make. This is it. And that's where Terminate came from. And then, Jay, the tempos and the styles were changing so quickly. And I thought, do you know what? I don't want to make the same music that everyone else was making. And I'll tell you what I used to get. I used to get cassettes from Dr. Scott of studio mixes he'd done. And it was just when he was getting into, I used to go and buy synthesizers with him. We were buddies at that point there, buying the same, the Journeys, the Core, they were made on a synth called a Korg X5D, and both of us went to Brum and bought one of those at the same time. So half of his tunes were probably made on that as well. And the Core, I just remember sitting there going like, I don't want to do the same Amen break as everybody else. And you remember I told you I used to listen to Rankin Miss P. Well, if you listen to the bass line in that, it's just it's a reggae bass line, It's just that reggae kind of sound, and I just wanted those subnotes. And actually, if anyone does producing, most of the bass lines, Rebel MC, us, everybody else, the bass line, believe it or not, on most of those tracks was the sine wave tone that you got on an S950. That's where it comes from. No and you used to shake, put a little bit of attack on it. Rebel MC, I remember reading his interview he did, and he said, the best bass line I ever made was the sine wave off the S950. And so it came from there. And it was just, that's what I wanted to do. That, right, everyone's done some ravey stuff, let's just, you know what I mean? This is Coventry, man. We are, and that's what it was.
A bit of dirt, a bit of grit in it, huh?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a funny story about that tune, because I made it genuinely. And what FBD was, me and Gavin used to sit there and chop breaks up. And, listen, there was no recycle back then. We would sit there for days just sampling little bits of tunes. And then what would happen is we'd chop the hell out of these breaks, really intricate, and really turn them into little bits. And we did a track called She's So. And if you listen to that, that's when we really went into the breaks and just really did loads of programming. But the Core, I made it in about 2 hours. And I was like, this ain't FBD, man. I can't do this because it's just too easy. Do you know what I mean, Jay? And it was just, I can't put this out. So I put it on the end of a DAT. And Jay, I swear I wasn't going to put it out. And I remember Scott coming in the shop. Scott used to have a black 405. My memory's good. And I remember
mate, to be honest.
in this 405, yeah. And he's gone, yeah, Neil, what are you doing? I said, Scott, man, can I play you a tune? He's gone, yeah. So I put the Core on. He said, we're going to go and cut this now. And anyone that's in the Midlands on here, there was a place in Birmingham called City to City. It was Midas Music Complex, a guy called Wes. And Wes used to cut all our plates for us because we didn't go down to Music House. Rest in peace, Leon, by the way. Yeah. I went to Music House loads of times afterwards, but this was really convenient for us. The plates were nowhere near as good, but actually that's where they come from. And actually, I'll tell you another story in a bit about 2 of those plates that never got released. But anyway, we got in the car to go to Music House, and Scott's Peugeot broke down on the A45 going to Birmingham. The gearbox blew up. And to this day, I always remind him that was the most expensive dub plate he never cut, because we never even got there.
Nice.
So
before we get into that, it's becoming a bit of a regular question. but there's one more question that I want to put in there. Sai says, who's your favourite member of the Two Bad Mice?
Well, every single one of them is amazing, right? But I've got to break this down. Sean, because I've made loads of music with him. Sai, because he's probably the best A&R person I've ever heard talk about records in my life. And Rhodesy, because I had the pleasure of seeing Rosie out of his face at Bangface and couldn't climb up the stairs. And Sai or someone had taken, and Mark Archer took a video of me and Madcap Elliot walking past him, and we're like, Rhodesy, what are you doing, mate? So I'm going to say each of them have got unique skills.
I love the fact that Rhodesy's skill is not being able to climb upstairs.
But no. In seriousness, this is and if Sai, you're on there, you'll remember this. We did a Moving Shadow takeover at Bangface. It's wicked. There was me, Gav. Oh God, who was that? Aqua Sky and Two Bad Mice. Foul Play, and Rhodesy had maybe enjoyed himself too much before he was playing, and he was on after me. So basically, Rhodesy played 2 tunes. The first tune, I can't remember what it was, but the second tune, he played Voodoo Ray on the wrong speed and didn't realise what he was doing. And I went to Sean and said, Sean, you probably want to get him off the decks, mate. This is your reputation going downhill, mate. So that was kind of set the scene for Rhodesy for the rest of the night. And this is on the Skeg. If you ever, you know, Bangface, right? It's just like 8,000 lunatics. And next thing I know, we finished this night and I'm walking back to the chalet because it's on a Butlins or whatever it was. And Rhodesy's on the floor and they're all at the top laughing at him. And we started singing, you know, Muhammad Ali, you know, that thing they used to go, Ali, Bombay. Remember that? And we were singing Rhodesy, Voodoo Ray, Rhodesy. And at that event in the daytime, this is how, so, I mean, this was naughty, man. We managed to get one of the walkie-talkies from the security guards. And you can imagine this in the middle of the daytime. So I'm sorry I'm saying this, but we've got to do it. So we were basically just sitting there watching. We're going, there's a fight at the bumper cars, quick, security to bumper cars, quick. And now this is like Nookie, Two Bad, you know, we're supposed to be respected, you know, representatives of the jungle scene. And we're sitting there on the floor in hysterics. Security to the bumper cars, quick, it's going off. You see all these security come out. What's going on? Security, it's going off inside, quick, get in. And we're like 45-year-old men just thinking we're 10 again, you know, 15 again, you know. So Rhodesy wins it for that, for the comedy value, you know. Yeah.
All right. Good. Very good answer. Blame. I was blame a little bit on the support with that, and he answered it very well indeed. He covered all the guys and gave them all credibility. So everyone's answered that very politically correct so far. They've done well. So I reckon we're going to catch someone out at some point with that question.
Also, to be fair though, I mean, Sean used to make some good food, so he gets one up. And Sai's looking after me at the moment, and we've got some good plans. And Rhodesy's just Rhodesy, you know what I mean? That's it. So.
I'm also going to send out a big shout out to DJ Marky. He's locked in from Brazil. Big up yourself, Marky. Hope you're doing good, mate. Do check out his streams. They're amazing. He does some amazing stuff. There's one I saw him do on Sunday. And he's got this camera up the top of his room and just looking down. It just looks like literally a warehouse full of records. So big up yourself, Marky. Let's take it back to the Eclipse. I know I want to dig a little bit deep. I never went there. You know, I kind of grew up raving in London. So we were doing Roller and Plumstead and, you know, all those kind of places, Laserdrome, Peckham. So we never ventured out. The only time I think we ever ventured out was when we went to Stearns, or if we were going to like a big one-off kind of Fantasia type thing. So tell me, what was? Do you remember the first time? And I'm sure you do because your memory so far has been absolutely spot on. The first time you walked into the Eclipse.
So even better than that, because before the Eclipse opened, you know, all the people that were involved in the Eclipse, and I mean even down to painting the walls and stuff like that, they were all friends of mine, you know. And this is what so before we go to the Eclipse, you know, there wasn't any internet, Jay. There wasn't any any way of knowing of what was going on. And, you know, and we were all these kids who were just, you know, in 18, 19, 20, 21, who basically were told, sorry, you're not allowed to go out and party. So just before then, you've got to remember, Amnesia House, we're doing all these illegal parties, the Cov Connection. And then, you know, I had a very good friend of mine who put an amazing party on, who ended up going to prison for it. You know, and I remember me seeing Dr. Scott running across the fields with a generator, you know, and playing Wood Allen Airport 89. And we were on the front page of the Cov Telegraph in our tie-dye tops, you know, acid house ravers take over field, blah, 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 blah. So you can imagine we'd already done a few years of lunacy before we even got to the eclipse. So having the eclipse come, I mean, you can imagine that, Jay, this was like going from, you know, a war zone into a kindergarten, because it was organized, you know, you knew you were safe there, you know, that it was structured, you know, you weren't going to get arrested and have your records taken off you. And, you know, this was brilliant. And then it was on our doorstep, mate. It was on our doorstep. So it used to be a bingo hall. I think it was whatever it was. It was Mecca Bingo Hall or something. Granada Bingo Hall, that's what it was. And, you know, this kind of came out of nowhere in a sense. And Amnesia were doing their thing. You know, we were working in the record shop doing our thing. And then all of a sudden the eclipse comes along. I mean, just imagine that. You live in Coventry, right? This place that went through, you know, quite a lot of unemployment and, you know, and stuff. And all of a sudden this club that genuinely attracted people from worldwide. I mean, worldwide. If they were over here, you know, the DJs were worldwide. Friday, it kind of started off on, it was a Friday and a Saturday, and Sasha was, you know, playing there every week. And so it started off as like a housey club. You know, there was no, like you say, it was lower BPM then, and it was a lot of house music. And, you know, Nipper and Eric would play there, John De Silva, you know, all these people I'm talking about, people wouldn't remember, you know, your Trevor Fungs and, you know, Enjoy would do a live PA. And, you know, because Coventry and Birmingham were in the middle of the country, they got influences from both Manchester and from London, you know. And the cool thing was the London DJs wanted to get out of London because there was a different vibe at Coventry. And I'm telling you now, I mean, I'll talk you through the different parts of it, but they had such a good time in that club, man, because the atmosphere in that club was off the scale, you know. And if you watch some of the videos that you can go back to, the cool thing about that club was it was big enough to be big, but it wasn't that big that, you know, it felt too open. And you could also, you know, you could put 800, 1,000 people in that club, and it was just like, I'm sorry, you can't capture that energy anymore. No mobile phones, you know. People used to go there and just sit on the stairs and talk to people. There was 3 stories of stairs, and they just sit there chatting away all night, you know.
Total strangers as well, you know. No barriers.
You know, and before that, you had Shelley's. You know, people would queue up to get into Shelley's at 6 in the evening. It didn't open till 9. You know,
I mean, you know, I even remember, like, you know, I was playing around the country probably from early 2000s, like 2002 to like 2008, probably the majority of the time. And you, even then, you know, you still noticed a big difference in the atmosphere from a London club to a Birmingham club to a Manchester club. Yeah. You know, there was a noticeable, you know, it was more friendlier, more open, more up for it. You know, there was definitely a different vibe that was going on.
It was really welcoming. And that's why the London DJs loved it. You know, before the eclipse, I mean, Jesus, you know, I'll tell you a really funny story about the Cov Connection, right? Just before, and carry on about the eclipse. This is how open it was. I remember the Coventry Connection, right? Sasha turned up and he was late for his set. Just imagine doing this now. And he went up to Mickey Line and said, Mickey, I'm here, man. Mickey said, you're too late, mate. You've missed your set. Here you go, have a Ribena. Go and enjoy yourself.
Wow.
You know, you couldn't do that now, you know. But this is what it was. I mean, I'm going back to day 0 when I remember Fabio didn't have a car. I remember we booked Fabio to play at the Dome in Birmingham, and he didn't know what to do. So he got off the train at Birmingham International. He phoned Nev, I'm at the station. Where are you? Where are you? Birmingham. No, you're not. We're waiting for you. I'm at Birmingham International, mate. Fabio, you should have got off at Birmingham New Street, mate. What? There's 2 stations, you know. But all those people then allowed the eclipse to happen because, you know, just imagine going to the eclipse. And this is what I loved about the 90s. Jay, you could go there. You were, you know, I was DJing there with the likes of Shock C, Jay Older, Parks and Wilson, you know, all the local guys, you know, the Distortion, you know, all these local lads who had all this on their doorstep. And we were kids who were being, oh yeah, you're playing after Cole Cox. Oh, great. Oh, by the way, you're after Groove Rider. Oh, we got, you know, we got Shades of Rhythm playing tonight. You know, we did a banging tunes night there. We had the Roughage crew. We had Randall, Fabio, Groove, you know, Mickey Finn, blah, blah, blah. You know, and the atmosphere wasn't just good. It was just through, it was off the scale, Jay, you know. Yeah. And it's really hard to explain that because maybe it was, you know, the enjoyment factor that was introduced from the little fellas that people had or whatever, whether I'm allowed to say that or not. But, you know, and the kind of, it was just one of, we're out to have a good time. Yeah. You know, and I think that was picked up on by the DJs because I'll tell you now, when DJs turned up there, they had to deliver. And look, I'm telling you, people would go and play other places up north and they'd always end up back at 5 o'clock in the morning at the Eclipse, right? And not to play, you'd have Groove Rider. Oh yeah, I was passing through, man. I come in to say hello. Do you know what I mean? You don't get that now, you know?
Different times, mate, for sure. Talk to me about Eclipse going into the Edge.
So the Eclipse, well, what's really interesting is I've just done a documentary with Coventry for Coventry's a City of Culture next year. And Adi Dowling, who used to do some amazing nights, Gamma Funkula nights, he's doing this big documentary about it. And obviously, you know, the thing you've got to remember is this. Every key city had a record shop, a club, and a group of people that really bloody worked hard to keep it all going, you know. And the Eclipse did its thing. And I did this interview, and this is why I mentioned that, because I did this interview with Adi, and he said to me, what was the difference between the Edge and the Eclipse? And this is what I thought was right. The Eclipse was a brand, you know. And what I think happened was that the Eclipse was a brilliant brand and everybody wanted to go to the Eclipse, right? But then what happened was that other promoters said, can we use the venue? Can we use the Eclipse? You know, and then it lost what the Eclipse was because it was other people telling people what the Eclipse should be. Does that make sense?
I guess you kind of sort of liken it to the Four Aces Club and Labyrinth. You know, the club was actually called Four Aces, but, you know, because Labyrinth was there, you know, every weekend, it'd be like another promoter coming in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And so the Eclipse was the Eclipse, and the people behind the Eclipse made sure it stayed as the Eclipse. You know, it had this special thing about it. It was like us with Banging Tunes. You know, I remember reading an interview about a guy saying I was scared to go into Banging Tunes because of Neil, you know, and it's like, why? And the guy said, well, I went in and asked for some happy hardcore once, and he just looked at me as if, you know, get out the shop. But that's why people kept coming back to Banging Tunes, because we only sold certain types of music and we were bloody good at it, you know. And this is what I think went wrong with the Eclipse, is the Eclipse was bloody good at doing what it did at that time period. And then when other promoters started coming in, because it was a popular venue, suddenly, oh, you know, it wasn't the Eclipse. Do you know what I mean? And then the people who went to see the Eclipse weren't getting that experience, and they'd gone on to other places, because the Eclipse was before the Manchesters and the, you know, I know the Hacienda was there. You know, I was lucky enough to go there, and there were some other places, but beyond the key cities, you know, if you started to go west or east or Scotland or whatever, you know, the Eclipse was kind of like the birth of some of those promoters, and definitely all the promoters got their inspiration from the likes of the Eclipse, you know. And that's what killed it, because it allowed those people who would travel for miles and miles and miles to stay local. So it ran its, you know, it ran its course, and then it reinvented itself as the Edge. But you say what was different. Well, when the Edge came back, what the Edge was about was about all promoters coming into the Edge. Do you know what I mean? And you would have, you know, your Jungle Fevers, your banging tunes, you'd have, you know, fiber optics, blah, 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 blah. And all those would come in there and put nights on. So what it actually became, I feel, it rather than being a club, it just became a venue, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And people use it as a venue then. And obviously that only had a limited lifespan because you can only put an event on there so many times before you run out of A promoters. And the Edge tried to fill it as the Edge, but the Edge didn't have that branding that the Eclipse had. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. The Edge was brilliant. You know, there were some amazing nights in there, including some of the ones we put in there. But the Eclipse was something different. It just had that little sparkle of rawness, and you never knew what you were going to get, Jay. You know, you never knew what and as I say, most of the DJs turned up there and they drew special tunes. You know, they really, really went to town. You know, you can tell when a DJ's having a good night, and you had to kick off these lot out of there rather than try and encourage them to come, you know? So.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to bring in a question from Damsky. He says, in '94, you did tunes that always seemed to have a mature orchestral angle and the rhythms were very signature FBD project. Did you intentionally go on your own tangent?
So for me, going all the way back to what I said at the start, which is like loose ends and, you know, listening to all soul and funk. If there's one thing, there's two styles of music I absolutely love, and that is the soul stuff and Detroit. You know, Detroit techno and all that early stuff. The way that you would take all those different rhythms and make them, you know, play off each other. You know, you listen to going back to some of those labels back then. You know, like +8 and you know, Transmat and blah blah. You know, all of those. It was just unbelievable. You know, and the rave scene started, and the rave scene with the break stuff, it would never have. There was some tracks that had strings in them, but it wasn't the kind of style to put that stuff in. You know, I still wanted to do it, and when it started to get a little bit more faster, because you've got to remember this, Jay. When it was slower, you could play different bass lines in, and you could program breaks differently. But as soon as you get over, say, 160, you know,
yeah,
you have to start playing bass lines at half the speed, because otherwise it sounds like a, you know, techno track, you know. And yeah. I was always into dub bass lines, so the half speed bass lines were brilliant, but then I needed something else to fill it, and that's why I was really into layering strings and doing things, and, you know, learning about technology, so you could take people on a journey, as someone's just put journeys, and that's why I made that track. It was all about taking people on a journey. And I had one, and this is my downfall in a sense, I had one attitude when I approached the studio, and that was, don't make the same tune as the last one you just made. So that in itself has a real short shelf life of your ideas. And if you, you know, go and get all of the FBD stuff, you know, the System 4 stuff I've done, Autumn, blah, blah, I'm telling you, you couldn't put them all together and say they're identical, because every single one I tried to do the breaks differently, every single one I tried to do different styles, and I just, because I was around so much music that sounded similar, my attitude was always, I've got to do something different. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where FBD came from. Don't do the same. Don't do this. And I don't care. You know, if one person bought one copy, or I sold 10,000 copies, I don't care. You know, because the best thing about it is, 25, 30 years later, there's still people saying, oh my God, man, I still play your tunes in the sets now. So it's great. You know?
Nice. Well, while we're talking about that stuff, so I know that you do have, you've got your Bandcamp up. There's a couple of tunes that you've got now. I'm going to stick the link down there. I think there's the Core and Terminate you've got up there. Any plans for repressing or releasing the back catalogue as digital? What's the thoughts there?
So I, as I said before, I mean, I got out of the scene for a bit. You know, what I did, it was very difficult for me, because when Banging Tunes kind of came to the end of its life, it was basically given to some other guys to run a second-hand shop in their record shop, and they did a great job. And I thought, what am I going to do for a living? And I got a job in a music shop, and I studied music technology, blah, blah, blah. And I ended up teaching at 2 colleges. I was teaching music technology, and I just got out of it, Jay, and just said, you know, got to get a career, got to get a job, you know, got a mortgage, blah, blah, blah. And didn't really think about all of the tracks I'd made before. And, you know, there was a point then in, I don't know, maybe like late 90s, early 2000s, when I didn't really like drum and bass, you know. It just wasn't, just didn't feel it. I'd already been doing it 10 plus years, you know, and it was just like, didn't really feel it. I'm a person that I make the track, do it, move on. I don't even hardly play my own music out when I'm playing sets, because I'm too judgmental. I'm like Tango. I used to go to Tango's house with him and make tracks. I've got loads of things I've done with him which have never seen the light of day because we were just too critical about things. It's a bloody shame, really. And you just don't think your music's very good. Do you know what I mean? and so I just forgot about my music. That's it, done. And then, as I was saying before, Sai hooked me up with Doug's from Rinse FM, and he said, "Come on, you know, they want to do an interview with you." And I was like, "Okay." And from that, Nibbers was there, who's put these nights on. Then David from Rupture said, "Come and play for me." And I was like, "Why do you want me playing now? You know, who knows about me? You know." And there wasn't any internet back there, so you didn't know what was going on. And it just made me realise, Jesus Christ, there's all these people who know about the music and know about banging tunes in Coventry. And I'll never forget it, because I've been to America with you at LA, and I was actually at, I couldn't sleep in the middle of the night. I was at a trade show for the music industry, and I put a post up on wherever it was, I can't remember, and said, "Hey man, shall I release some old FBD stuff?" And I finally fell asleep in the bed. It was like 6 in the morning. I got up and I looked, and there was like 200-300 posts of people saying, "No way, it's Neil," you know. And this was like MySpace days kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, I need to do this. Yeah. And then I repressed the core and terminate. And then what I did, because, you know, I'm a firm believer in also making sure the youth coming through know about what was, and apply what was to what will be, you know, because I think we should all go back and take the roots bit and think about how we. I'm lucky I work in the music industry, right? And I remember I was down in Guildford and I phoned Groove. I said, "Groove, I'm about," because he's down that way. He said, "Yeah, man, pop in, come in." And I hadn't seen him for a few years, and I said, "Groove, you know, how do you feel about still being in the music?" He said, "Neil, man, I pinch myself every day thinking, when am I going to have to get a job?" You know, and this is what you think, that time's gone so quick and you don't realize that all that stuff was done a long, long time ago. And then it made me think, okay, what about all these new kids coming through? So what I did with the core, I just got all the samples, and I just thought, I put all the samples up online and said, right, whoever remixes the core and does the best remixes, you can all vote for it. I got like 50 odd remixes come in, and I basically took all the titles of the artists and everything, and I put them all up on a SoundCloud account and said, whoever gets the most votes, I'll release it. And I released 2 tracks by one Leo DSP and one guy called Pixel, who are now doing brilliant music. And I basically put them out on a double pack. So that was the second re-release we did, but I put Journeys on it. And I also then started digging through my DATs. Jay, I've got a loft full of DATs. I've got tracks I've done with Scanner, with Deep Blue, with Future Bound, Total Science stuff, you know, all this stuff just sitting there doing nothing. It's still there, you know. And I thought, I found this Journeys track that I'd done.
Pretty sure everyone that's watching now,
you know, and I found this Journeys Gestures Without Emotion tune that I did on Reinforced. I found a remix I'd done and I gave it to Total Science, and that never came out. And I thought, well, I'm going to put that out as well. So, you know, so that was the next thing. But I just don't get time. You know,
But you know what?
I mean, you can
this
have to.
is, like, I get, what you're saying. There was always a critical ear, and I think there was even more pressure back when it was just vinyl, because in digital, music can be a little bit more disposable. There isn't as much financial investment into getting a tune into the public space. Whereas with vinyl, the record label had to A&R it, had to get tested on a dub plate, it had to prove that it could do what it could do in order for the label to then validate putting thousands of pounds behind it to then hopefully sell a minimum of X amount to make the money back and obviously make a profit. And your story, I don't think is.
That was when
I'd say.
That was when, though. This is when record shops. This was when people wouldn't gamble, right? And this was the good bit about the 90s, in the sense that you had to make half decent music because no one would take a risk on you of pressing up vinyl. Even if you only got 100 or 200 copies made, it was still a financial investment. So that's what. The only bad thing about technology is that it means that people who are into the music have to take more time to sift through all of the places where you can find it to actually get to the bits that they really like. And unfortunately, that's what a record shop was really good at doing, was holding on to a community of customers who knew that I was the quality control, or Luke was the quality control, or Fiber Optic in Leamington, Elisa was the quality control, and that don't exist anymore now.
Well, there were multiple layers of A&R process, from the label initially to their financial involvement to then the record shop for them doing it as well. So you're getting these two layers in there. The point I was going to make is that, because there was that pressure back in the day to really finesse and get those 100% right, I'm pretty sure that if you dug those DATs out, with Tango and the ones that you've done by yourselves and with whoever, and put a selection of those up online, I'll be pretty confident they would stand up.
I'd say people would be interested, but
I'd say being interested is at the very least. I think there's a lot of people that are screaming now saying, where the fuck are those DATs and why aren't you picking them up?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I'll tell you two funny stories, right? And I forgot about half the tunes I've made. First of all, there's two tracks that are floating around that I was talking about, City to City. Well, there was a couple of plates I cut, one for Scott and one for Keith Suckling. And there was two tracks I did. And actually, I made them. One of the tunes is a track called Alibaba. And that was given to Groove Rider. And I used to make tracks just for DJs. And I did a track called Forever Rolling, which was for Fabio, and a track called Alibaba for Groove Rider. And they never came out, and I'm getting hassled every day by people. You've got to put them out. You've got to put them out. But then there's another really funny thing, because I got away from the scene, and then I came back, and I was in Tesco's, right, and I was chatting to Stretch from AKO, and I was going, because I put this track out that I did with Madcap as the FBD return, which is a track called Nima, which is basically Amen in reverse, by the way. And, Stretch was like, come on now, you've got to do a tune. And then we were chatting away, and he's going, do something else, And I was chatting about this track called Faces, which everyone was talking about on YouTube. And this is one of the good things about technology, because everyone was on YouTube going, man, there's this tune that Randall or Goldie's done. No one knows what it is. It's reinforced. It's amazing. You've got to get it. And I was chatting to Stretch. He's gone, yeah, well, what we're trying to do is, I've spoke to Goldie. He doesn't know the tune. The Four Hero guys don't know it. Mark doesn't know. And I said, what's it called? He said, it's a track called Faces, man. I said, Faces? I did a tune like that years ago. I never put it out. I gave it to Fabio. And I did a search on YouTube. And basically this tune that everybody said was Goldie, it was me. And I'm like, and I phoned Stretch. I said, Stretch, that's me, mate. He said, no. I said, yeah, dude, I've got the DAT somewhere. So I found the DAT, and this is the bit that I'll swear, Leo DSP, I won't tell you where he lives. It's in Milton Keynes, but he has got my DAT tapes at the minute because we've been doing some music, and it's full of tunes, absolutely full of them.
Well, I think there's definite demand, because we talk a bit about this, that with people like Brent from Vinyl Fanatics, with MPS guys. with lifting spirits. A lot of this stuff is coming back with represses, but also supporting new tunes. You look at like Mike, Blueskin Badger, all those guys. There's definitely, there is a market out there for sure. It's nowhere near as big as it used to be, of course, but these are passionate people that are out there, buying this music.
But let just say one thing. You were at that record store day at Clashmouth, right?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm sorry, mate. That feeling, that's it. If you don't, this is what I'm saying. I don't have to be in the scene every single day to be part of the scene. I've been there, done that, and I don't mean that in a funny way. I'm just saying back in the day, we created this scene, and to go to that Clashmouth event and see the young kids feeling the same about music as we did back in the early 90s. I'm the happiest. I took my daughter down there and my son one year, and just unreal, Jay, mate. You came out of there feeling the buzz from it was unbelievable. Yeah. This is brilliant. People, the vinyl, man, vinyl, oh, look at this. I've got an MP3 of a track. No, mate, you've got, vinyl. It's real.
Yeah.
This is going to go on forever. This is that remix. It's brilliant.
You know what? For me, I only went to that Clashmouth I went to was the only one that I went to, and unfortunately, it was COVID kind of hit in and stopped it all from there on. It was the closest, very close that I'd ever got to from being in a record store, hearing things. It's so, and I think because a lot of the labels had all, most of them all made a special effort to get a new release. Obviously the new Tom and Jerry was always a high point. Getting to the reinforced thing was like number one. I was lucky enough to kind of squeeze in there before it all opened, and I think Stretch, or it was okay. Yeah, I think it was Stretch that was running the reinforced one. And I was trying to see if I could get one, be a bit cheeky and buy one before, everyone else had ploughed in. And he got there about 3 minutes before it all opened up. So he's like, I'll sort you out in a minute. I'm just trying to get everything all set up before the floodgates came in.
So just so everyone knows, Jay's using his power to get one up on everyone. Come on, Jay.
Listen, when it comes to buying records, mate, I ain't messing around.
It's a black crack, mate, at the front of the queue, 100%,
I'm actually more addicted to buying records now than I was. Probably more because I knew that I could only afford to buy 1 or 2 records back then a week if I was lucky. And now, you get a little bit more disposable income. You're like, yeah.
But, and Jay, I was saying to you before, and what I want to do, is a documentary on crate digging. There should be a documentary on crate digging. People who go out and source record, the buzz of going to a shop and spending, 6 hours in a shop. I used to go down to Music Power, even when I had banging tunes, right? We still used to go to Music Power because I met Top Buzz, and Top Buzz couldn't get any gigs in London. And a friend of mine, Milos, we were like, get them up to Coventry. They're amazing. And then Neville and co started getting them up, and Jason and Patrick and that. Their music was bad, man. They were just playing bad music. And, I'd go to Music Power and I'd sit there from like 10 in the morning. I'd get the National Express down there, 10 in the morning, down a Green Lane till 6 at night, watch all of these little vans turn up, mate, with all these, little bits of imports and stuff that you knew no one was going to see. And I remember walking out there with Jay Stoppers. He said, so you must have the best record collection in the Midlands then, And I was the vinyl we were getting was just unbelievable. And that's the buzz, Jay. You would get out there and you'd be on the bloody coach coming home like this. Oh my gosh. The record, and you know what? The people next to you going, "He's a lunatic." You're looking at, "Oh my god, I need to read what's on the inside bit. What does it say?" But
when we had Fantasy on a couple of months ago now, and he was saying about when he used to go record shopping with Carl Cox, and he said like he's the worst person on the planet to go record shopping with because he would literally buy anything and everything, like all the good. And he was like, Carl would walk out literally with a stack like that, and you're trying to kind of compete with him. It's like I've literally just spent my whole week's wages on all these records. Yeah.
So, in a sense, what's bad about, you know, I'll be honest, what I don't, it's brilliant now, but I don't like it is the fact that the value seems to have gone out of music in a sense because it is digital. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I understand it and I get technology, but I so used to apply more value to the work and the hard, you know, what I try to explain to people now, you know, I've had tracks bootlegged and I've had people come and say, oh man, send me all your tunes, you know, and it's like, do you do a living? What do you do for a living? Blah, blah. Do me a favor, give me 10% of your wages every month, will you? What are you talking about? Well, just buy my track for £1, man. You know? You know,
do you know what? The age of digital was a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, you know, I do feel it's made music more disposable, but on the plus side, it has enabled music to reach places that it never would have reached before.
100%.
Yeah, and it, you know, and it also gave, you know, a platform for people to start making a name for themselves. You know, SoundCloud was a great option. I'm talking the early days of SoundCloud. You know, I did great out of SoundCloud because I used to do, you know, quite regular mixes and putting them up there, and you know, started building, you know, people, you know, following you, started to hear what you were doing, and you know, you'd only be able to achieve that by, you know, recording a load of tapes, getting them all copied, and then just throwing them at random people in the streets and hoping that they like it. So it's, you know, it's a hard, but I think that emotional connection to, well, certainly for me, will never go away. You know, like you say, it's actually holding it and going, you know, it's the end result. It's the end of the story of someone, or an end part of someone's journey, right? That they have created and poured blood, sweat, and tears into this. It's gone through all these processes, and now you can physically hold it.
Yep. And I'll tell you what was really interesting as a producer as well. You wanted to hear your test presses. Do they sound the same as the way I cut them? You know, and I've gone back and scrapped TPs many times because I'm like, nah, that's not what it sounded like when I did it.
Yeah.
You know? So not just the art of making it, and you know, again, we go back to R.I.P. Leon, and you know, it's like the guys that mastered it and got the best out of it, and you know, and made it sound right, and then you know, and I tell you what's really cool is the art of DJing with 2 turntables, right? Because that is, I used to sit in banging tunes with no headphones, and I was mixing for 8 hours a day, and people used to come in and say, can I buy that tune? Which one? I don't know, whichever one you were playing. Yeah, but I was mixing that into that. Okay, I'll buy both then, you know. You know what I mean? And that to me, I mean, I listen to you on your shows and it's like, go on, yes. And you know, I wind you up about it. I could hear it going out a tiny bit, and I'm like, JJ, slow it down a little.
Push that one, push that one.
Push it, you know. But that's the art of DJing, is you want it to go out of time, because in your head, you must do this, Jay, you've split the track up into the left and the right side, and you've broke it down. I can hear the hi-hat in that, I can hear the kick in that, it's going out, I know I've got to pull that back. Oh my god, I've lost which one is it again? I better take a gamble. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
I'm gonna and that to me is DJing.
Yeah, but that was, you know what, and this is, you know, I took a very long journey in learning to DJ, and you know, I had the first thing I bought was one of those kind of wooden disco decks that had no pitch, you know, had a mixer in it, and really all you could do was just spin back, next tune, spin back, and then my mate got 2 Sound Labs and a Citronic. Made to Fade.
Yeah, Made to Fade, yeah.
We had no idea. And then in 93, I went to New Zealand. My whole family moved out there. So we went out there for the year. And I learned to mix in New Zealand with no turntables. Because what I did, my mates would send me tapes. I obviously took a bunch of tapes out there with me. And I would sit there and I would listen to it. And I'd go like, how has he worked out that at that point where it's come to a natural end, that next one's at the same point, bang, and off he go. And then they would then go, right, okay, I'm going to rewind it. Okay, and I knew nothing about beats, bars, phrases. I had no idea. It was just about, oh, okay, that sounds a bit different. So I can hear he's brought that in. Still to this day, when I came back from New Zealand in beginning beginning of 94, I just got it. Like, and it's that thing in your ear that just twicks. Suddenly you can split your brain in half. That's focusing on what's going out in the speakers. That was your headphones. And that's basically it.
Really?
And my mates were like, you've just spent 12 months in DJing. I was like, no, I just basically stopped and listened.
Yes, exactly. And that is what the art of, and I wrote courses for the local Coventry council, and I basically could teach someone to mix in 10 weeks. They did a 10-week course. Within 5 weeks in, they had to mix 2 tunes together. But by the end of that 10 weeks, they were mixing, because I taught them how to listen to different parts of records, you know, take it apart and understand what you're listening to, and then listen to the groove, you know. And this is what I love about DJing. I hate hearing sets where everything's identical. It's like, go in there, man, you know, get in and really scare yourself, you know.
Yeah.
Do it.
Do you know
what's going to go wrong? And then when you get it right, start, pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is DJing, man. You know,
mostly, whenever I have time, I'm always listening to mixtapes from 91 to 94, 95. That's just a go-to for it. And like going back to what you said earlier, there's such a beautiful simplicity about listening to a DJ doing something with just 2 records. And it's not not just about those 2 records though with me. I go, because like you knew, you know, I'm very technical. I love the digital era and everything that it can do, but I also fully and firmly grounded in those 2 records. But it's also, you know, thinking there was, you know, forget effects, forget the filters. There wasn't even EQs half the time. There wasn't even the gain control. Like if it was a low record, you were fucked. You just didn't play it basically if you were in a club. But you know, people that, you know, the 2 that really stand out, well, there's kind of 4 or 5 altogether. Randall, Ratty, Slipmat, LSD, Fantasy. Specifically, Ratty had a huge influence on me as his mixing style. And the number 1 set for me from him was Red October 92. Him and Robbie D, his tune selection, his cutting, little bit of subtle scratching, just hearing the creativity that Ratty poured into that set. Unreal. Still blows me away now.
The thing with Ratty and people like that, the thing with Ratty is that he didn't just do it to be a DJ. He did it because he was really into it. And when you actually listen to someone mixing who's really, really into it, then you understand how they can be such a good DJ, you know. You've got to hear it. You've got to hear every bit of it. You've got to understand where it's going. And, you know, that's sometimes you can hear Groove Rider and you know what his style. You can hear Fabio. And I don't care if their mix is a little bit out. It's the tune selection and where they take you and how they bring you back again. And you know what? When I used to do my DJ courses, I used to say to people, and this is really true, do you know what? As a DJ, the best bit about being a DJ, you're the only person that knows the next record. Right. And the best bit about that is you can choose, and this would be, you can choose whether someone pisses themselves on the dance floor or goes to the toilet, you know. And it's a journey. I hate, you can play for half an hour, 45 minutes. I'd rather not bother. Give me 2 hours. Let me do something. Let me take people there. Let me pull them back again, and let me just play around with them and go in for 10 minutes there and then come back again. And you know, and someone's just put Bookham. That is LTJ Bookham. He's a master at it. He's absolutely unbelievable at just, you know, taking you there. But if you get Groove Rider on man, I heard Groove Rider playing at the TikTok in Coventry, and people were nearly crying. The guy just with Cool and Deadly emceeing, you were just there. You were in it, and you could see he was in it. And there's, you know, this whole thing about DJs sticking their hands in the air. Dude, a good DJ's got his headphones on and he's just down. He's in there. You watch Equinox DJ. That guy's having more of a party than the people on the dance floor because he loves the music, you know?
I remember there was one guy, oh, God, I can't remember the name of the night. It was one of the first nights I ever went to in 91. Turns out that it was run by Red One, Scott, who's now Andy C's manager. Imagination, that's the name, right? They started off in Liverpool Street. They went to another one. They used to have a resident DJ there called Just Jones. And I think this was probably 92 by this point. There's this club in Tottenham somewhere, tiny little thing. It was literally just full of smoke, like you couldn't see or walk anywhere. And the DJ booth was like a little cage, literally like a little jail cell. And you could walk up the stairs and go round and see what was going on. Still to this day, maybe Eric Murillo, I've never seen anyone work so goddamn hard. Like literally, he had a guy there amongst 4 record bags who was literally just doing this, taking one record, giving him the next one. And this guy, Just Jones, was just slamming them in, throwing in, bang. And I stood there. I mean, I was obviously, you know, on my way at that point, but I was mesmerized. But and again, that kind of fast approach to it, you know, and hearing what Ratty did. And I also wanted to kind of mention Randall. Now, obviously, Randall's got huge respect in the scene, very well earned, well deserved, and should continue on. But I don't know if many people really have heard much of what he did in '92. And that, for me, is the interesting part, because that's the start of his story. That's where he started to shape the blueprint of his mixing style that would go on to make him, you know, the DJ's choice, you know, within the scene. I actually put this up on my Mixcloud, so if anyone's interested, just go and check out my Mixcloud. I've got a playlist called Cunning Selection. Randall, GQ, Dream Duo, AWOL 92. Check out what he does with Roughage Crew Terminator. Yeah, you know, the whole set. It's about an hour and a half because the AOL ones were quite long. But just listening to what he was doing, you know, and you know, I know his mixing style well, especially in that kind of jungle drum and bass era, and to hear so far back and hear, oh, there's those seeds that were laying in, you know, really layering stuff together. You know, I still get so hugely inspired by that. I love the beautiful simplicity of it. And the creative output that came, you know, from that.
But as you say, people were doing this, right, with 2 records, no filters, no EQ, nothing. And this was the best bit about it. The way people were managing to do that was simply because they bloody bought their records and they studied their records. They knew that each track, you know, one track had a 64-bar intro, and then it did something, and then the breakdown would do that, and they knew, and you could watch people doing it. You know, the Randalls would be, he knew it. See, again, they didn't, a lot of these guys didn't map out their set. What they did, they had an idea, and I always do this as well. I've got 3 or 4 tracks I want to start with, but then you'd follow the crowd. And that is the best sign of a good DJ, is when they can look at what's going on. They still don't diversify from what their style is, but they start taking you on a little journey and they pull you back in again. It's still Randall, but he's just going in and coming out and going in, and it's just smooth, you know? Yeah. And it's just, and that's like Ratty as well. Ratty would be cutting stuff up, bring it in. He'd know when to take it to the next level, and he had that very jungle techno sound. You know, he was taking it on it. But again, you could just see he was into his head, like Tango. I mean, Tango was an overthinker. He used to think too much, you know, and he was really critical, but flipping amazing, you know. And you watch him, the intricacies of what they're doing, you know, it's just unbelievable. And that's on 2 decks, you know. And then you had the Cole Coxes who were doing 3-deck mixing. That was a brilliant. But if you get a really good DJ, you don't even realize they've been playing for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's the other thing is, you know, just about the mixing style, you know, not even noticing that they're mixing it when you've really picked 2 tunes well. And again, you know, for me, that was one of the things that really inspired me that Ratty used to do. You know, he was doing so much cutting up and chopping, but you could tell every tune, from tune to tune, there was a common bass riff or melody or something in there that he was matching. It was Q&A, it was the A, B, and he was doing that, and he did it with such finesse.
But that was like writing tracks. When most people, producers, write tracks, they do a thing called questions and answers, you know? So the question is the first part, and then there's an answer. So you'd play a string, and then it needed to have a little piano to answer it, you know? You'd play a dark sound, and it needed a little stab to answer it. Do you see what I mean? You know, when you a bar, you'd put a fill in so you could answer the new bar when you brought a new break in or something. You know, that's what DJs do as well. They question and answer, and that's what I love, Jay. It's like doing reel to reel stuff. If you can, that's what I loved about DJing, is that you can the art of putting two tracks together to make them sound like one and capturing people so they still look at you and go, where's he going with this? You know, what's this doing? I don't know where it's going. And again, that takes me back to the Eclipse, because that was the Eclipse. You used to get people going there, and you didn't know what the next tune was. And even if it was Groove Rider would come and he'd drop, you know, he'd drop a techno track going into, you know, a breaks track, and then, you know, Fabio would play Cole Craig bugging a bass bin, or, you know, the way that they just took you there. And, you know, some people have said, oh, I'd clear the dance floor. Well, great, clear the dance floor, but then work your way back on again. You know, the art of being a good DJ is introducing music that people aren't used to, and doing it in a way that you just keep them entertained as well, because that's the next big record or the next big style, the big thing that they don't know about yet. And that's what a bloody DJ is good at, is by saying, you don't know where I'm going with this, but in 6 months' time, you'll remember it. And that's what's wrong at the moment with bloody COVID, is people are saying, the entertainment industry, what does it offer? Do you know what it offers? It offers the future, man. It offers the future, because DJs and producers are making the future. But going back on that, right, so are the manufacturers. If we didn't have S950s back then, if we didn't have affordable synthesizers and blah, 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 there wouldn't have been a rave scene, you know? Yeah. Because we all grew up, and this is a really interesting thing. You know, we grew up not being musicians. But if I'd have brought loads of musicians into the studio to say, come on, make some tracks for me, I would never have made Journeys, Gesture Without Motion, because I don't want to sit there and hear right, that's a G major into an F minor going into a C. I don't give a shit.
If it sounds good, I'm rolling with it.
Do you know what I'm saying? And that's what 100% music. And that's mistakes. It's like modern day jazz in it. And Goldie said this loads of times. We were making music that shouldn't have worked. But it bloody did.
The whole beauty of it, right? It was the self-made, you know, self-made man, self-made that took control of it. I don't have necessarily the skills, but I've got the heart and the ears to know what.
And you know what the best thing is, Jay? You cannot teach anybody that.
No.
You either got it or you ain't. And people that say, yeah, I've made this tune, man, with Apple loops and blah, blah, blah. Stop. I was teaching music technology. Go away, learn about what's in your head. Yeah. And put what's in your head onto that computer screen in a linear or non-linear way. Yeah. Don't do what everyone else has done. That's why I tried to be different with FBD. Don't do what's been done. Do what will be. You know, let's do things that, and maybe people might not play at every set on a dance floor. I don't bloody care. What I care about is the fact that I've tried to do something that progresses the music. And you know what, Jay? Honestly, right? I never met a lot of people because I got out of the scene. And I remember someone sending me a link not long ago, and Marcus Intellect, God rest him. You know, just before Marcus passed away, I got a Facebook message off him which said, Neil, man, I have been playing your music again, right? We need to talk. And he passed away 6 months after that, right? And I never got to speak to him. But then I read an article about Marcus, and this was just like, wow. I'm happy, right? I'll tell you two things that happened to me, which I'll never, ever forget in my life. And I read an article, it's online now, and it's who are the 5 most influential people that got you into music? And I was number 2.
Wow.
And he said, I used to wait. And I'm just like, my records are crap. I don't make good music. I'm not a musician, but I'm urban. Do you know what I mean? I know what's right and what's wrong. And to have someone like Marcus Intellect say that, I mean, Jesus, man, that's unbelievable. And then I wanted to tell you one other thing that absolutely blew my head away. I remember playing in the Eclipse when it was the Edge, and I was playing before Groove Rider, and I knew Groove quite well. And I used to go to London with Scotty cutting music, and I remember I did Gestures Without Motion, and we were all sat in Sony's mastering house with Groove, Fabio, Randall. In fact, Gerald was with us, a guy called Gerald, because we actually set Groove Rider studio up for him, me and a guy called Gerald. And I remember in the Eclipse, and I was in the Edge, and I was standing there, and Groove had played one of his new tunes, and I said, do you know what, Groove, man, one day I'm going to make music like you. And he said, you don't get it, mate. one day I'm going to make some tracks like you. And I was like, what? You know, that's just unbelievable. That's why I made music, Jay. I don't care if I sell one copy or 2 copies. I care that somebody's going to remember what I tried to do, you know. And what comes out on my music is what's in my head. It's what I've grown up. I grew up on a council estate. You know, I had good times, really bad times, you know, and all that came out in the music. It was the music that kept me alive, you know. It's the only thing that I captured onto that made me think, shit, life's worth living, man. You know, and it is.
You know, that's the beauty of the music, its origins, where it came from. That's what made it what it is. And I think, Neil, you hit the nail on the head. If some classically trained pianist and a music school teacher had come in with you and gone, you know, this, that, and the other, it would have been nowhere near what you've done.
Yeah.
You know, it was your story to tell, right? It's your story to tell, not anyone else's.
And this is what I'm saying to kids that are coming through. Yeah, man, I bought a sample CD. What? Make your own, man. You know, use the tools. Buy one piece of equipment. Learn it inside out. You don't need 10 synths. You don't need blah, blah, blah. Buy one thing and get that, what's in your head, onto the screen, man. And that is it. And once you can do that, that's your identity. That is you. You know, I made a track called System 4, right? Which came out on Funk 21, which was an offshoot of Partisan, probably the best track I've ever made. And I took an old Technical X break, I twisted it to bits. Every single sound is completely made on a JV and a JD800. No samples, nothing, completely all programmed. Jesus, man, I'm just like, yes, at last, that is my sound. That is what I can hear. It's not a 4-bar loop that I've taken from a jazz CD or a blah, blah, blah. Now that works, don't get me wrong. Just try and find your sound, man, because that is what, just think about it, Jay. There's tunes, we're back in fashion again from 30 years ago. I'm an old man and I'm inspiring 18-year-olds, you know, it's brilliant.
Yeah. And
that's how it should be. But the only way we can inspire them, right, is because we bloody made what we wanted to make back then. What about 30 years' time? Half these bloody 4-minute tunes aren't even going to be remembered. You know? Are they? Let's be honest.
But
I heard some amazing tunes and amazing labels recently. You know, people like Stretch and David and that, you know, AKO really pushing that sound, the old school sound, but with new school people. You know, with the overshadow thing that's happening, going back to the roots. We all deserve a little bit of recognition in a sense because we were the foundation, the people who began this bloody thing. I don't care about making music anymore. I do because I love it. You know, it's amazing. But what inspires me more is hearing a bloody good tune from a person that sent it to me. And, you know, Stretch sent me something that's coming out on AKO and an Immortal Minds thing. I'm just like, oh my God, it's just unbelievable. It's never going to sell 20,000 copies, but I can just sit there and listen to that tune 50 times and just go, oh my God, you know? And this is what I love about music. And it doesn't have to be one style. People go, well, what style are you into? I'm into music, mate. Music.
Very true.
You know?
Very true.
Styles are for hairs. And I haven't got any. So I haven't got any style. You know? Just play music, man. You know?
Neil, before we wrap this up, I do want to dig a little bit deeper into Banging Tunes, the label, because I don't think we really spoke about it that much. No. So let's go back to the kind of start of that. What was that conversation around starting a label?
So really going back to knowing that I wanted to make some music. So we put the first track out, you know, the FBD thing, and I'll tell you a funny story about that as well. Jesus, man, I could sit here all night. I've got a million stories. But FBD, when it came out, I'll never forget this. It was me and John Graham went into London and we went to JTS, Jartubby Sound, and that's where we got the first tracks pressed. And we went into London and he had an old Vauxhall Cortina, a red one. It was battered. And this is John Graham, man. This is Scanner. This guy's fucking legend. And I can't remember the track he did. It might have been Heaven or whatever. I can't remember. And we've gone into London, picked up our records, gone in. Oh, come on, we'll go home. No, let's go into Soho to Black Market and see if they want to take some offers, right? So I'm there, me with FBD, thinking no one's going to like this, you know. And then John's there as Scanner, and we're in there. Ray, do you want to take some? Yeah, I'll take them on sale or return. Oh, really? Yeah. So that was a Friday. On the Monday, Neil, man, it's Ray. Yeah, I need some more, man. I've told them all. Really? You're joking? And John's got the same call, and me and John are like, we're pop stars, man. We did it, you know. And that was it. And then mate, once you've had that experience, I looked up to all these people, you know. But even though I was DJing with them every single week, you know, they were still my idols. You know, the Groove Riders, the Fabios. You know, wow, it was just unreal. And again, this is a thing that, Jay, one thing I wanted to just say. Jungle didn't start in London, right? Jungle started everywhere. So it's not a London thing, because half the DJs in London were playing all the music from Tango, from me, from Dr. Scott, from, you know, SS, from Simon Bassline Smith, from, you know, Photech and Total Science, who were in Oxford, or blah, 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 blah. Please don't say it's a London thing, because it ain't, because we were all part of it, you know. And it's a UK thing, man. We should be so proud that we designed a form of music that is respected worldwide, you know. And it is no stretch. You know, because we all deserve a little bit of respect for it, man. You know.
Yeah, no, 100%, mate. There's no, and look, you know, this is partly my inspiration for doing these, and why I want to do these, because I want to hear these stories. You know, I told you before, and I've said this many times on here, you know, back then there was no magazines covering it. There was no internet. There was no nothing. Unless you were in that circle, you didn't know what went on. You didn't know who was involved. You know, to be honest, even the cities were in bubbles. You know, I had no idea there was a scene going on in all these other countries. We used to go down Stearns, we used to do whatever, but, you know, we never left London. So, you know, just that lack of knowledge and understanding about just how far widespread, you know, the evolution of this sound was something that I didn't know, but I want to know, and I want other people to know as well.
And that's what and this is what I was so proud about. And we'll go back to Banging Tunes, but I was so proud about getting out of the scene and coming back and genuinely meeting the Stretches and the Davids and, you know, Nibbers and all those people, and realizing, bloody hell, this scene hasn't gone away, you know. And in fact, if anything, there's more. And Elliot, you know, Mr. Madcap, who I'm making music with now, there's all these cool kids coming along who are really into the same kind of things that I was into back in the day, and they're making just as good music, you know. But Banging Tunes, back to that. So the Terminate thing came out, and that influenced me from the guys at Moving Shadow. I was listening to that, and I heard the Chaotic Chemistry thing, and I was like, oh my God. And I remember buying a synth called a Kawai K1, and it had that organ sound on it and the whale sound on it. And the reason the two sounds don't play together is because I hadn't learned a thing called multi-timbrality. And multi-timbrality is where you can play multiple sounds out of a synthesizer, and I didn't know. It was brand new. So I only thought, I actually managed to learn a thing called program changing. And program changing is where you can take one sound in a synth and write a program change in the controller values, and it will change it to a different sound. That was more complicated to do than multi-timbrality, but I'd learned that, so it made me have these two sounds from this synth in the same track, you know. And that's what my head went like. It was just like, I've got to learn, I've got to get the best out of this, you know. And this was in a little bedroom in Willenhall in Coventry, which is an estate in Coventry. And so the Terminate came out with Breaking Up, and Breaking Up was like 9 minutes long. And Mickey Finn gave me a bollocking because he said, Neil, man, you've sampled the Steve Austin thing from my Biting Back record. I said, but Mickey, you sampled it from Steve Austin. All right then, Neil, I'll let you off, you know. And then it was like that. And then obviously the Core came out, and we were doing things like She's So. And because we were in Banging Tunes, the good thing that happened then, people were bringing demos to us. So we had Organic Synthetic. Then I started another thing called Urban Visions, which was bringing on two guys called Tribe 02. And one of those guys is a guy called Lee Gamble. Now, Lee Gamble's a massive electronic guy, but his first ever tunes were done in the basement of Banging Tunes. You know, this is a guy who's gone on to be a massive electronic head. And I taught him how to make music, you know. It's brilliant. And I just wanted to keep taking banging tunes, but my whole thing with banging tunes was every release had to be different, you know. And I don't care if they sold. Doesn't matter. I care that people come in and go, yeah, man, I want to take that tune. Maybe because they want to play it at home. Maybe because they want to play it in a club. You know, the core was a club track. You know, but I just wanted to keep making music. It was difficult because then I was working with like Justice, Future Bound, Brendan, Sean, Deep Blue. I did some stuff for Total Science. Their release on Partisan, I engineered all that. Did some work for them, and I just was really into the music. But the problem then, do you know what, Jay? It was very hard to make a living, you know. So having the shop, I was taking no money out of the shop at all. You know, I was making music, and you know, I'm going to be really honest. You probably got what, £500 advance on a track. You know, it's not a lot of money to live on. And I was, you know, some of these tunes, they don't just happen overnight. Some of these tunes, you keep going back to them and back to them. And it might take you 2 or 3 months to do a track. And it was hard just to say, do you know what, as an art, and this is what annoys me about COVID and the, you know, artist thing. You know, artists, they don't just get up in the middle of the night and go, I finished a tune. You know, they have to wait till it happens. And that doesn't mean you're going to earn a living, you know. And some of the best tunes will never come out because people have to work. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Isn't that annoying?
It's life, right?
I mean, well, it's not though, is it? Because they don't put a value on creativity. And that's really what annoys me. Some of the best records that could ever be made maybe will never happen because people have, you know, to earn a living. So why can't you earn a living from being an artist? You know, and it's like being a footballer. I never made it. You know, I'm not the Andy C or the blah, blah, blah. I don't mind. I really had a good time, and I played at some of the best clubs in the country with the best DJs, and, you know, and I had a brilliant time. I didn't earn a living out of making music. I did it because I loved it, you know, and that's probably why I never made commercial music in a sense, because I just wanted to make what was inside me. And I reckon there's hundreds of people like that who just wanted to get what was inside them out. And that's what Banging Tunes was about, was just put out what you feel, man. And it probably did all work. It probably did all sound like, it probably did sound similar, if you know what I mean, because, you know, I do have these progressions. And actually it was interesting because that Faces tune on YouTube, one guy had put, I bet this is an FBD project track. And it was, because obviously it sounded like something that, you know, something I would make, you know. Isn't it great?
Right, let's talk about what you're working on now. You've come back and you've hinted at a few people you're working with. So what's on the cards for you music wise?
Well, I can't say anything, but something got sent to me I think was it last night or today, and a person on here knows exactly what it is, and I cannot wait for the next thing I've got to do. And I asked somebody if I could do something, and they went away and asked the artist who's a hero of mine, and they said yeah. So there's a thing that Elliot knows about, which we're going to be working on. Me and Elliot have got, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 things sitting there. We've got loads of tunes we've done, and I just don't get time. I really, really don't get all the time. My wife, who's on here, she needs to kick me up the arse a bit more. And it's hard work. I've got 2 kids, and, you know, I've got, as you know, Joe, I've got quite an intensive job. And but it's still inside me. And that's what I love about the music thing. It'll never go away. And it's bloody annoying because you almost like, oh, I ain't got the time to do this. But there's a little thing in my head going, you've got to make some music, man. You've got to get it out. It's a release. Some people go and drink in a pub, you know. Some people go and dance on a dance floor. I just want to make music, you know, or DJ, you know. But I don't get time.
It's important, mate. You've got to make time for it.
Yeah, Jay, but, you know.
No buts, Neil. Get your ass in that studio, mate. Sparkles, you know the kick up the arse you need to give him.
Okay, let's just go there. Lucy, my wife who's listening, 2 options. Finish the house, do some music. What would you rather do?
And on that note,
And on that note, I'm sleeping in the office.
33.
No, I love it, but I'd rather not. I don't want to make production line music. I want to just make something that I feel. And if I don't feel something, don't do it. But when it does come out, when it comes out, you do it. I've got a million ideas of things. Jay, we chat about this all the time. I love the whole art of it because and the good thing is I'm 50 years old, but I feel like a 20-year-old. And I'm so glad that this generation of people who exist, a lot of them feel exactly the same as me. I can go out into a club. If I play down at Rupture, you'll see a 50-year-old standing next to an 18-year-old. And it's like, brilliant. And they're both there for the same bloody reason, for the music.
Yeah.
And what it's all about. And I feel so privileged and proud that the generation of kids that are coming through now still have that urban thing inside them and they want to be part of this and they want to do it. So will that keep me making music? Bloody right it will, because once it's in you, it's in you. It's annoying in a sense because maybe it's good to have an easy life, but actually no, it's the thing that drives people forward, isn't it? And I would say to anybody, make music because you want to, not because you feel you have to. Be a DJ because you want to, not because you want to be cool, because you want to be into music.
Very wise words, Neil. Mate, I've got to thank you. That was hugely informative. I am still pretty reeling at the accuracy of your memory. I'm very envious of that, mate.
Well, Jay, let's remember we have done a training session in LA in the gym together at 6 a.m. I'll never forget that.
We did.
And I was teaching you
jet lag.
I was teaching you how to do exercises on 30-second stints, if you remember. That takes me back.
I've forgotten those. You'd have to remind me of those.
I've shared a sweaty room with Jay with shorts on, so that's
and it was an uncomfortably small room, I have to say. Basically a large toilet. Mate, you're an absolute legend. I really do hope that you're going to get on the couch with some music, mate, because I'm pretty sure most people listening would love to hear some new stuff, mate. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, mate, and I will catch you again soon. Well, tomorrow, in fact. Let's face it.
See you later.
Take care. Thanks, guys. Cheers for locking on. We'll catch you Tuesday for I don't know what I'm going to do yet. We'll work it out.